June 3rd, 2000, Las Vegas, Nevada. 90 seconds. $1,600,000. Gone. And the strangest part? The casino that got hit was the Bellagio, the most surveilled casino in the world. Cameras on every corner, guards on every floor, and 3 men in body armor walked right in, cleaned out the cashier cage, and walked right out again. Jose Vigoa was not a career criminal. He was a Soviet-trained Cuban Special Forces asset. 44 years old, nearly a decade in federal prison for drug trafficking. Released into a Las Vegas he no longer recognized. A city run by corporations, not mobsters. A city built on routine. And he decided to declare war on it. But this isn't just a story about a casino heist. It's about a man trained by a Cold War superpower who turned those skills on the Las Vegas Strip. A 2-year campaign of armored truck robberies, casino cage hits, and 1 double homicide in a raw stress-for-less parking lot. A detective who refused to let the case die, and 1 half-second glance at a ceiling camera that ended it all. 6 robberies, 2 dead guards, $160,000 in Bellagio chips, and 1 man who believed Las Vegas was not invulnerable, until the city proved him wrong. This is how a former Cuban Special Forces officer waged a private war on the Vegas Strip, and how 1 camera lens brought him down. To understand Jose Vigoa, you have to understand where he came from. He was born in Cuba during the Cold War, into a system that valued discipline over comfort and obedience over freedom. At a young age, he was selected for specialized training, removed from ordinary life, prepared for command. He learned structure, hierarchy, control. He was trained to operate in units, to follow orders precisely, and to lead without hesitation. His education was not academic. It was functional, tactical, focused on outcomes. Later reporting would describe him as Soviet-trained, molded in the style of elite special forces, a man built to function under pressure in hostile environments, where hesitation gets people killed. That background matters, because when Vigoa defected and eventually reached the United States, he did not arrive as a dreamer. He arrived as a tool without a mission. He drifted into the cocaine trade. At the height of the cocaine years, he had been a serious player. Organized, trusted, useful. But that chapter ended the way it always ends. Federal agents, federal charges, federal prison, nearly a decade behind bars. In the spring of 1991, a prison bus pulls into Henderson, Nevada. A man steps off into the desert heat. 44 years old, no prospects, no plan. A criminal record and a skill set that does not fit anywhere in civilian life. His name was Jose Vigoa, and he had no idea what to do next. After prison, Vigoa tries to live normally. He looks for work, he attempts stability, he tries to integrate. He takes odd jobs. He lives in modest housing. He drives old cars. He pays his bills when he can. To any neighbor, he would have looked like any other middle-aged man trying to put a prison sentence behind him. Quiet, polite, forgettable. But civilian life is unstructured. There are no clear rules, no hierarchy, no mission, no chain of command. He is trained to lead, but no one is following. He is trained for discipline, but everything around him is disorder. The other men he had trained with were far away, still inside a system that made sense. The Cuban state had been a cold home, but a coherent one. Every hour had a purpose. Every rank had a function. Every soldier had a place. In Henderson, Nevada, there was no place. There was only a man and an apartment and a television that played commercials for casinos he could not afford to enter. And slowly, quietly, frustration sets in. At the same time, Las Vegas is changing. The city Vigoa sees in the 1990s is not the Las Vegas of organized crime and informal codes. The old mob town, for all its corruption, had rules, limits, a sense of balance. That city is gone. In its place is a corporate machine. Mega resorts rise along the strip. Casinos merge into global companies. Everything becomes automated, optimized, scaled. Money moves in massive volumes, silently, through systems designed to be efficient rather than human. Every day, millions of dollars flow through armored trucks, cash carts, and back-of-house corridors. These casinos appear untouchable, but to Vigoa, they look predictable. He watches how money moves. He studies routines, schedules, security patterns. Armored trucks arrive at the same times. Guards follow the same procedures. Cash is moved along the same paths day after day without deviation. The system is built on routine. It expects compliance. It relies on deterrence. Vigoa notices something else. He sees where those routines can be broken. He believes the casinos operate because they are protected, not because they are fair. That belief leads to a decision. He did not move right away. Instead, he started to prepare. He begins assembling a small crew, not large, not reckless, men with criminal backgrounds, men with military experience, men who understand discipline and silence. There is no rush. They train in the Nevada desert. They rehearse movements. They eliminate unnecessary steps. Weapons are chosen for intimidation, not chaos. Timing is measured in seconds. Escape routes are planned before targets are selected. The desert is a perfect classroom, empty, silent, no witnesses. Vigoa sets up mock scenarios, cardboard guards, taped outlines of cash carts, a stopwatch. Again and again, the crew runs through the same sequences. Entry, containment, extraction, withdrawal. A single movement off by half a second is noted, corrected, and rerun. This is not how most criminals prepare. Most criminals improvise. Most criminals rely on adrenaline and luck. Vigoa relied on neither. He trained his men the way he had been trained, until the body knew what to do before the brain could ask questions. By the late 1990s, Vigoa believes he is ready. He is not trying to disappear. He is trying to demonstrate something. That Las Vegas is not invulnerable, that its systems can be broken, and that no one is watching closely enough to stop it. The war is not started yet, but the first strike is already planned. Think a former Cuban Special Forces officer could really outmaneuver the most surveilled city in America? For 2 straight years? Drop your prediction below, and subscribe, because the way this ends is not what anyone expected. The first robbery does not happen by accident. By the time Jose Vigoa moves, every step has already been tested. Not on paper, not in theory, but through repetition, timing drills, walkthroughs, dry runs that leave nothing to chance. He chooses the MGM Grand because it represents scale. At the time, it is the largest casino in Las Vegas, a place where money moves constantly and quietly, shielded by routine rather than force. Every morning, armored cash leaves the casino floor the same way. Guards follow procedure. The transfer takes place in public space, disguised by noise, lights, and foot traffic. Vigoa understands that visibility can be protection. On September 21st, 1998, just after 11 in the morning, that assumption collapses. As an armored cart is pushed toward its vehicle, masked men step out of the crowd. Their movements are coordinated and immediate. There is no shouting, no hesitation. Weapons are raised only as much as necessary. One guard is forced to the ground. The other is held in place. Within seconds, control is complete. The cash is transferred. The crew withdraws. A vehicle pulls away as if nothing unusual has happened. Tourists continue walking. Slot machines continue ringing. From start to finish, the operation lasts less than 2 minutes. $500,000 disappears in plain sight. Witnesses later told investigators they barely registered what was happening. A few people in dark clothing, a brief moment of tension, a cart that was there, then was not. Some of them thought it might have been a security drill. Others thought it was a film crew. Nobody thought they had just witnessed an armed robbery. That was the whole point. Vigoa had not designed a heist. He had designed an illusion. By the time the brain caught up to the eyes, the money was already in a vehicle heading east. Inside the casino, panic does not come immediately. The loss itself is manageable. Casinos absorb that kind of money every day. What cannot be absorbed is what the robbery represents. Someone has demonstrated that the system can be interrupted without warning, without chaos, without resistance. Publicly, the incident is minimized. Internally, executives push for silence. The narrative becomes containment, a one-off event, an anomaly. That decision gives Vigoa exactly what he needs: time. He studies the response, not just from the casino, but from law enforcement. Separate agencies, separate jurisdictions, no unified strategy, no central coordination. Vegas assumes the threat will disappear. Instead, it adapts. Months later, the next attempt comes at the Desert Inn. This time, resistance is expected. Guards are alert. Procedures are tighter. When Vigoa's crew approaches, the response is immediate. Shots are fired. Glass shatters. The operation fails. They retreat without money. But failure does not discourage Vigoa. It clarifies. The system is learning, but slowly, and fear is beginning to appear. The casinos still avoid public acknowledgement, but on the ground, guards are tense. Escorts rush transfers. Movements become less relaxed, less routine. That tension creates new weaknesses. By October 1999, Vigoa strikes again, this time at Mandalay Bay. The setup mirrors the MGM hit. The timing is tighter, the approach more aggressive. A guard is shot in the leg. The crew escapes with a smaller sum. But the message is unmistakable. This is no longer a fluke. Las Vegas has a pattern, and someone is exploiting it deliberately. Investigators begin to sense it as well. Reports are compared. Tactics overlap. The discipline is consistent. These are not spontaneous crimes. They are rehearsed. Still, the response remains fragmented. Different casinos, different security firms, different priorities. Each entity protects its own reputation first. And so the robberies continue. Between hits, Vigoa refines everything. Routes are adjusted, entry points reconsidered, escape vehicles rotated. The crew trains again in the desert, correcting small inefficiencies. The goal is no longer just success, it is dominance. By now, Vigoa believes he understands the battlefield completely. He has tested resistance. He has seen how the system reacts under pressure. He knows where coordination fails and where silence persists. He also begins to feel something new. Confidence. Not the reckless kind. The quiet kind that comes from repetition without consequence. But confidence creates risk. Each operation pushes boundaries further. Each success reinforces the belief that control is permanent. And beneath that belief, something else is changing. Because the system is no longer ignoring the threat. It is watching. Not closely enough yet, but closer than before. And the next move will force everything to change. By early 2000, the pattern is no longer subtle. Multiple casinos have been hit, different locations, different layouts, the same discipline, the same timing, the same calm withdrawal. For the first time in years, Las Vegas understands that it is being studied by someone who plans faster than it adapts. Security budgets increase, procedures are adjusted, escorts move quicker, radios stay active, but nothing fundamental changes. That becomes fatal. On March 3, 2000, 20 minutes from the Strip in the town of Henderson, a Brinks armored truck pulls into a small shopping center. The stop is routine. The location is ordinary. A Ross dressed for less. No tourists, no spectacle, no reason to expect trouble. Two guards step out of the vehicle. Within seconds, both of them are dead. There is no warning, no chance to comply. The gunfire is immediate and overwhelming. The attackers leave with barely $4,000 in cash. The money does not matter. This robbery breaks the rules that Vigoa himself established. Until now, the violence had been controlled, measured, used only to enforce compliance. This time, it serves no operational purpose. There is no efficiency in it, no advantage gained. Two lives are taken for nothing. The guards had families. The guards had partners waiting at home. The guards had shifts that were supposed to end at a specific hour. They had routines and habits and coffee orders. None of that mattered. Within the span of a breath, all of it ended in a parking lot where the most dangerous thing was supposed to be a shoplifter. The impact is immediate. Law enforcement treats the scene differently. This is no longer a sophisticated robbery problem. It is a double homicide, a public execution in a commercial parking lot. And for the first time, silence is no longer an option. News coverage explodes. What had been buried in brief internal reports now appears on front pages. Cameras line the Ross parking lot. Politicians demand answers. Casino executives, who had spent 2 years insisting there was no pattern, can no longer control the story. The public wants to know who did this, and why. Inside the crew, something shifts. The precision that defined earlier operations begins to erode. Small disagreements turn into open tension. Vigoa becomes more isolated, more volatile. He begins to suspect mistakes everywhere. Sleep becomes irregular. Planning sessions stretch longer, revisions multiply. The discipline remains, but the clarity does not. At the same time, investigators finally gain traction. One detective, nearing the end of his career, refuses to let the case dissolve into bureaucracy. Lieutenant John Alamshaw does not approach the robberies individually. He treats them as a single operation unfolding over time. Alamshaw was a Vegas lifer. He had seen the mob years. He had seen the corporate takeover. He had seen the casinos become temples of data and surveillance. And he had seen, in the pattern of these robberies, something that every other investigator had missed. He had seen a soldier. He studies movement patterns, entry choices, escape decisions, the consistency of posture and positioning. These are not criminals improvising. They are following training. That realization narrows the field. Former military, comfortable under pressure, able to coordinate silently. Alamshaw cross-references vehicle sightings from earlier robberies. A partial license plate leads to a registered owner. That connection leads to a family, and from family to one name that fits every requirement. Jose Vigoa, Cuban-born, federal prison history, documented discipline, proximity to known associates. The profile aligns too closely to ignore. Still, suspicion is not evidence. Alamshaw watches and waits. Meanwhile, Vigoa accelerates. The Ross killings have changed the landscape. He knows it. The response will not be passive. Whatever time he had is closing quickly. That pressure produces the most dangerous phase of the operation. In April 2000, at the New York Hotel and Casino, Vigoa abandons force altogether. No masks, no visible weapons, no aggression. In the middle of the day, two men walk onto the casino floor. One reaches an unattended cash cart near a cashier area. He wheels it away calmly. No one intervenes. No alarms are triggered. By the time the theft is noticed, the money is gone. It is the cleanest operation yet, and the most revealing. Surveillance footage captures silhouettes, movements, familiar timing, enough to confirm what Alamshaw already believes. The same crew, the same rhythm, the same leader. Vigoa believes this operation proves his control, that he can move freely through the heart of Las Vegas without resistance. In reality, it confirms something else. He is pushing too hard. The timeline is collapsing. The robberies are happening closer together. The risks are compounding. The margin for error is shrinking. Alamshaw sees it clearly. Criminals who slow down are cautious. Criminals who speed up are running out of room. The end is approaching. Vigoa feels it too. He prepares one final operation. Bigger, louder, impossible to ignore. A statement that will eclipse everything that came before. He chooses the Bellagio. By June of 2000, the Bellagio stands apart from every other casino on the Strip. It is new, expensive, designed to project control. Cameras cover nearly every corridor, every cashier station, every public space where money moves. That visibility is exactly why Jose Vigoa selects it. The operation is scheduled for just after midday, when foot traffic is heavy and attention is diluted. The crew moves quickly, wearing body armor and face coverings, rifles held low but visible. The intent is not chaos, it is dominance. Inside the casino, the plan unfolds without resistance. One man heads for the cashier cage, another for the change booth. A third watches the floor. No alarms, no guard engagement. In under 90 seconds, the bags are full. High-denomination chips and cash, roughly $160,000, secured. The crew exits as efficiently as they entered. No one is injured. From Vigoa's perspective, the mission is complete. What he does not realize is that something small has gone wrong. In a city saturated with surveillance, control depends on consistency. Masks stay on. Angles stay predictable. Exposure is managed. This time, for a fraction of a second, that discipline slips. As the crew moves through the casino, Vigoa looks up. Not long, not deliberately, long enough. A ceiling-mounted camera captures his face clearly. Maybe he was checking the angle of the camera. Maybe he was scanning for an exit. Maybe he was simply looking up, the way anyone looks up, for half a second, for no reason at all. A reflex, a glance, a human moment in a plan that had been designed to eliminate them. Whatever the reason, it was the single most expensive half-second of his life. Back at the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, Lieutenant John Alamshaw reviews the footage frame by frame. For months, every image has ended the same way: blurred silhouettes, obscured features, nothing usable. This frame is different. It confirms what the investigation has been circling without proof. Within days, the image is distributed internally. Surveillance teams move. Warrants are prepared. For the first time, the case is no longer abstract. Vigoa is identified. The decision is made to go public. Local news stations broadcast the image. The man who has humiliated Las Vegas casinos for 2 years is no longer anonymous. The effect is immediate. Vigoa knows the moment he sees it. There is no contingency plan for exposure. The system he exploited depended on silence and delay. Once that disappears, so does his advantage. Days later, police surround his home in Henderson. When they knock, there is no response. Moments later, a white Chevrolet Suburban pulls away at speed. Vigoa is behind the wheel. A pursuit cuts through residential streets. Patrol units converge. A helicopter tracks from above. Sirens fill the afternoon. Residents step out onto porches to watch the Suburban race past. For a brief moment, the Las Vegas suburbs looked like a war zone. The vehicle slows near a construction site. Vigoa jumps out while it is still moving and runs. The chase ends among scaffolding and dirt piles. Officers closing in from all sides. He resists arrest. He fights. He shouts. It changes nothing. The man who had planned every step of every operation for 2 years had not planned for this. There was no escape route out of this moment. There was no contingency for a helicopter overhead. There was no drill in the desert that ended with him face down in construction dirt, wrists behind his back, a patrol officer's knee between his shoulder blades. For law enforcement, the manhunt ends there. The search of Vigoa's home begins immediately. Beneath a concealed trap door, officers find what they have been missing for 2 years: weapons, masks, body armor, cash, everything needed to connect the robberies into a single operation. The arrests continue. Oscar Sanchez Cisneros is taken into custody. He is limping from a gunshot wound to the knee. DNA links him directly to the Ross Dress for Less murders. Faced with evidence, he confesses. He identifies Vigoa as the leader. He names the others. Within months, Cisneros dies by suicide in jail. Other accomplices plead guilty. Sentences are handed down quietly. Vigoa avoids a capital trial by pleading guilty to dozens of charges. The sentence is severe: 4 life terms, stacked with additional years that ensure he will never be released. It is one of the longest sentences given in Nevada to a non-terrorism defendant. But Jose Vigoa did not disappear quietly. In 2002, he attempted to escape from Ely State Prison using improvised equipment. The attempt failed. He was returned to custody. The details of the escape attempt are the kind of thing that could only come from a man like Vigoa. Improvised tools, careful timing, a plan that might have worked in a less modern facility. He had not given up. He had simply been moved to a smaller battlefield. And even there, in a maximum security prison in the Nevada desert, he was still running the same operation his training had prepared him for: observe, plan, execute, adapt. He failed, but the attempt alone told the system something important. Jose Vigoa was not a man who accepted containment. He was a man who treated every wall as a problem to be solved, and he would keep solving it until there was no breath left in him to try. The war he started ends the only way it could, not with victory, not with justice, with containment. But Las Vegas moves on. The money keeps flowing. The system survives. There is something unsettling about the Jose Vigoa case. It is not the money. $1,600,000 in Bellagio chips is a small figure by casino standards. It is not the method. Masked men with rifles in a cashier cage is as old as Vegas itself. What unsettles people is the training. Jose Vigoa was not a thief who learned to fight. He was a soldier who learned to steal. The Cold War built him. A foreign government paid for his education. A Soviet curriculum shaped his reflexes. And when that war ended, the soldier was left behind, with a skill set and no enemy. So he invented one: Las Vegas. For 2 years, the most surveilled city in America could not stop one man with a small crew and a disciplined rehearsal schedule. The MGM Grand, Mandalay Bay, New York, the Bellagio, armored trucks, cash carts, change booths, each operation planned in the desert, each operation executed in under 2 minutes, each operation a quiet demonstration that the emperor had no clothes. And then, at the peak of his confidence, he looked up at a camera. One glance, one frame, one face. That is all it took. Today, the casinos he hit are still standing. The Bellagio still runs. The MGM Grand still runs. The security systems have been upgraded. The procedures have been rewritten. The training has been intensified. Not a single dollar of the money Vigoa stole was ever recovered from him, because most of it was already gone, spent on operations, on weapons, on the war itself. The 2 guards killed at the Ross Dress for Less have names: Richard Sosa, Gary Prestige. They do not appear on wanted posters. They do not appear in documentaries. They are not the part of the story that gets told. But they were the line Vigoa crossed. The line that turned a sophisticated crime spree into a death penalty case. The line that made silence impossible. Their families carry what Vigoa left behind. No heist, no sentence, no prison term returns a father or a husband or a friend. The Ross parking lot looks ordinary today. A storefront, a lot of painted lines, a place where cars park and carts are returned, and nothing unusual is supposed to happen. But for those 2 families, that parking lot is the center of a wound that has never closed. Jose Vigoa is still in prison. He will die there. 4 life sentences do not allow for anything else. Somewhere in Ely, or wherever he has been transferred, a former Cuban Special Forces officer sits in a cell and remembers the 2 years when he believed Las Vegas belonged to him. It did not. It never did. The system he attacked survived. The casinos he hit expanded. The Bellagio still glitters. The MGM Grand still hums. Tourists still walk past cashier cages carrying souvenirs from a Vegas that has no memory of the man who tried to break it. His name survives only in court filings, newspaper archives, and the occasional documentary, a cautionary footnote in the history of a city that specializes in forgetting. And that brings us to the end of our story. If you liked it, don't forget to like and subscribe and activate the bell button so you can receive new videos.